underestimating or underscoping the work involved. The temptation is to give the lowest number possible to get the sale.
It says, oh yeah, that's probably going to be like $10,000 to do, and then they come back and quote, actually, it's $500,000.
Estimates are super helpful because you as the client spending your money, you want to have some idea what you're getting into.
What are some mistakes that we try to avoid and that our customers should avoid when they're having quotes built out? Today, Andrew, we get to talk about estimates versus quotes, which is something that's really important and has shifted over the history of Bixley. And I think this is something that is commonly kind of misconstrued in the development space. People may ask for an estimate when what they really want is a quote, or vice versa. So let's talk about the differences. What is an estimate? What is a quote? And how are these kind of different?
That's a great question. So estimates and quotes are very different. An estimate is really a best approximation of what something's going to take, what the work involved is going to be, the time, the cost, based off of typically a pretty limited amount of information. Whereas a quote is a firm fixed price that goes into the contract, but it's based off of a large amount of time spent really digging into something. So both our time and the client's time.
I liken it to, you take your car into the mechanic, you walk in, you say, hey, listen, it's making this weird sound. They say, oh, that sounds like it could be this. It generally costs this much money. I'm going to estimate it. Leave the car with me, though. I'll call you back in a day or two and tell you what it is. It's this. It costs this much. It's going to be this much time to deliver.
Right.
Quote. And that's something that I don't think is always kind of processed through on the development side. So it's useful information. When we're building out these estimates, and providing quotes ultimately, or people that are going to get this from a different development shop, what are some mistakes that we try to avoid and that our customers should avoid when they're having quotes built out?
I mean, probably the biggest one is to avoid, underestimating or underscoping the work involved. The temptation is to give, the lowest number possible to get the sale, and there's certainly, unscrupulous firms that will do that sort of thing to get in the door and then say, oh, by the way, it's this and this and the other. So we really try to be diligent to make sure we're giving accurate quotes, and really accurate estimates and accurate quotes, and spending the time to understand, the work involved in order to give a ballpark. And estimates are super helpful because you as the client spending your money, you want to have some idea what you're getting into. Are we talking days, weeks, months, years? What's kind of the general ballpark of this investment that you're about to make? And an estimate is a good way to spend a reasonable amount of time with both parties and get an idea of what game we're playing, what ballpark we're in, before you really jump in with both feet.
So in essence, your estimates should be in the ballpark of your ending quote. And if you're talking with a firm, for instance, that says, oh yeah, that's probably going to be like $10,000 to do, and then they come back and quote, actually, it's $500,000, they either don't know how to quote or don't know how to estimate, or kind of what's the situation there?
Yeah, so I mean, really the quote, that's a good question. The quote should ideally be within the ballpark of the estimate. Now, it's possible that as you do further discovery into the project, that the client will want additional things, and then that quote will move outside of the scope of the original estimate. But what we really try to do in very early phases with the client, like initial calls, is establish, what kind of time frame are you working with? Do you need this in 3 months? Do you need it in 6? Is it just as soon as possible? And what sort of budget are you working with? Are we talking $100,000? $250,000 plus sort of thing? Because we're going to build something around that budget, right? Like, we're not going to try to build you a Ferrari if you want a Honda kind of thing. And so by establishing those parameters, that allows us to build an estimate around what they can afford, the functionality they can afford, and then eventually the quote should ultimately be in line with that, so that when they see the quote, it's not like, wow, I never expected this.
Yeah.
It should be pretty consistent with what they saw. Also, just another part about making estimates accurate is breaking things up into small chunks.
Okay.
So the client will say, we want this sort of functionality, oftentimes in very macro big chunks. And then we'll take those things, ask questions, and try to fragment them down into smaller pieces of work that are a week or less. And those things are much easier to estimate accurately than these real big chunks, where lots of little pieces of work can kind of hide underneath the surface. And so breaking things down into smaller pieces is super useful. and also just asking a lot of questions. We really try to understand, what is the success criteria for this? What is the client trying to get out of this? It's possible that they have an objective that they haven't really articulated to us yet. And when we really start asking questions, we kind of bring those things to the surface so that as we go through the whole estimation process, we have a very clear target to shoot at.
Gotcha. So as a customer, if you're looking to have something estimated, looking to have something quoted, what are some useful questions to bring to the table to your development team, or ultimately bring to the table for us? And then I think as a follow-up on that, what are some good questions that we can ask the customer?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the application. If it's something that already exists, it's kind of a matter of what's going on that you like, what don't you like about what you currently have, what are you trying to change, what could be improved, what should be gotten rid of. Really understanding your clients and your customers' motivations for wanting to use your services. Understanding what success looks like and being able to quantify that. To be able to say, this thing is worth this ROI if I achieve these things. Because those are the big scorecard that you're going to use at the end to say, was this a good use of my money or not? I forgot what your original question was.
No, it's good.
I'm just going.
So I think with Bixley, as we're working through these quotes and we're working through these estimates with our customers, the question was, what are some useful questions that we like to ask the customers, and what are some useful information? What's useful information they can bring to the table to help us deliver the best estimate or best quote for them?
So some really useful questions we can ask them are, how are users going to interact with the application that we're building for them? How are you currently filling that need? Is it a manual process? Is it paper and pen? You're doing an inspection on a clipboard and you're writing these things down and emailing it to someone. What is the user experience? How is this used, and how should it be used? So just really understanding kind of how the data is going to move and what the workflow is going to look like allows us to really just kind of break down these things into very actionable chunks, which we can then estimate.
What are some of the dangers with going with the company that bids it lower? Should you always just go with the best price tag?
Well, I mean, you get what you pay for. But I think it's important to compare what you're going to get, not just the outcome of the software product, but really what is the whole experience going to look like? How much time are they going to spend really understanding what it is you want, and how confident are you that you're ultimately going to get what you want when you're done with that?
So how much time was put into actually getting to that number?
Right, yeah. How confident are you that they understand what it is you want? That's a big deal, right? Because if I spend very little time, I can give you an estimate very quickly. It will probably not be accurate, or it will be extremely broad, right? 2 months to 2 years. It's probably a safe bet. But really taking the time to understand clients is something that we do because we want clients to really be happy and felt like they were understood, and then they have something built for them that isn't just custom, it's like perfect fit custom for what they needed.
And I would say in closing that estimates and quotes both have their place, because there are opportunities where you need to scale quickly on something, and you need that broad range of an estimate to know if I have minimum this and roughly maximum of this, I'm probably going to fall within the realm of what I want to build. And there are opportunities where you can have a little bit more time. You might be a little more budget conscious, and you need to know exactly how to build out your milestones and cost phases. And so I would say both of them have their place, and Bixley has the opportunity to both estimate and quote very accurately.
Absolutely. I think they both have their place. And quotes are great when you know exactly what you want, right? Like, it's very easy to quote a car, right? Like, I want that one. Okay, this is the price. Software becomes trickier because it's custom. And if you can point to, let's say, a competitor product and say, I want that plus these 3 things, that's one thing. If it's something that you're kind of bringing to the market that's new or really innovative, and you're going to be getting a lot of client feedback and requirements will constantly be shifting, a quote can be counterproductive because you're just constantly doing change orders. And really, at the end, you just ended up with a bunch of estimates. You didn't really end up with a quote because it's shifted all over the place. So for clients that need us to be more flexible and have lots of feedback incorporated, to be very agile, going more of just the estimate and a very iterative approach can be beneficial. When it's clients that really can nail down, this is exactly what I want to build here, it looks like this. A good one for that is if a client already has a version 1 or a version 2, they know the product super well, and they're like, this is what we have, these are the things we want to change, here's the code, and here's the original developer that wrote it that you can ask questions to. That's a lot of uncertainty that you've taken off the table.
Got it. Very cool. Well, I'm hoping from this and the conversations that we've had, people are going to have a better understanding of what the benefits of a quote and an estimate are, how they can utilize those, and ultimately get the best bang for their buck out of their custom software.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday, hearing Chris and Andrew talk about how to make accurate estimates and bids and what the differences between those two are. If you have any questions at all, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. And don't forget to check out the description box down below. We have a couple of really helpful links down there for you guys, including a link to our free custom software guide that will give you a lot of tips and tricks about how to plan out your own app or website idea. And you can also check us out at bixley.com. And right at the top of the website is a big button that says Get Started on My Roadmap. And that will actually get you a free 60-minute conversation with Chris about your app idea. And he'll give you his advice, his feedback, and his expertise in that time. So we hope you'll check that out. And until next time, this has been an episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday.